Stand by for broadcast.
You're listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations.
Hello, I'm Squadron Leader Peter Lisney, and in this episode we meet Air Officer Northern Ireland.
2% of the population of GBNNI comes from Northern Ireland, but 6% of defence, 6% of us comes from Northern Ireland. So that notion of service is huge. Even when I'm in my number one uniform, Sinn Féin politicians will come up and talk to me. They're curious about what we're doing, why we're doing it, where we can add value. Like most things, I've got something that I've learned over many years, which is think big, act small, move quickly, and that's what we did.
Also in this episode, we'll reheat a few stories just in case you missed them, and we'll be finding out who is under the hat this week.
Hardest part of your job?
Try not to eat too much, probably.
Find out who is under the hat at the end of this episode. Now, how the public perceives the RAF can be pivotal to its effectiveness, whether that's with operations, recruitment, or being accepted by the communities around its bases. We asked InsideAIR's Corporal Vic Andrews to find out how the RAF approaches this challenge in Northern Ireland. She spoke with the senior representative of the RAF there, Air Marshal Sean Reynolds.
Air Officer Northern Ireland, Air Marshal Sean Reynolds, very welcome to the podcast. We're delighted that you could join us, and a special privilege for me to interview you coming from Northern Ireland and that special link we share. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be with you. Been looking forward to doing this for a little while now.
Super. In terms of your role, could you maybe break that down for us and describe to us the role of sort of a regional air officer?
Yeah, sure. So we've had regional air officers now for, 10, 20 years at least, I think. Initially it was for Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. Recently, I think 2 years ago now, we widened the aperture and we've now got 4 in England. I think, if I'm being honest, because the Air Force Board, the EXCO, the Executive Committee of the Royal Air Force, saw the value of us and how we were able to do engagement. And that's the key word there, is engagement. And actually what we're doing now is engagement. That's part of the strategic engagement for the Royal Air Force. So we look after the regions and we kind of fit in to the strategic engagement plan. So if you've got the Chief of the Air Staff at the top, who's doing high level engagement, and then you've got the senior leadership team who are also doing senior engagement, below them, are where the regional air officers kind of fit in. So we take a very regional view of it. But we're trying to push the RAF's engagement strategy. And what I always kind of think is, in terms of engagement, now what does it do? Now, how do we do it? And where do we add value with that? And it's trying to, I think, do a number of things. And this is a bit of a lift out of the engagement plan, actually, which mirrors my engagement plan. So we're trying to inform key decision makers across the country about, the value of the Royal Air Force, what we do, how we do it, and why it's so important to the nation. We try to influence as well, to share ideas, and so other people can share those ideas as well. Of course, there's an attract piece in there for recruiting, trying to get talented young people interested in the Royal Air Force and wanting to join us. We also support UK PLC, the industrial base, and trying to, the growth agenda and try and push that. And then also we're trying to show all of that and the general public our value and where we add value, not just in terms of the defence of the United Kingdom, and NATO and all of that, but also in terms of where we add value, as I've already said, economically, societally, and our own value set. So it's quite a wide canvas on which we paint. And as regional air officers, we try and deliver that, but from a regional perspective, I think is what you would say.
It sounds like a vast remit. I just wondered, in terms of the scope and autonomy you might have with regards to that engagement plan, do you get to kind of script that and work it out yourself, especially maybe in Northern Ireland where we have geographical and political considerations?
So as you'd expect, there's a cascade of policies and plans all the way from defence, the RAF, because the RAF's got its UK strategic engagement plan, it's got an international engagement plan. Clearly, we read all of those. We also have, every 6 months, we have an engagement conference chaired by the Assistant Chief of the Air Staff, and Air Commodore Phil Wadlow, who's effectively line manages me to the Assistant Chief of the Air Staff. So what I do, and having been doing this now for just over 6 years, I take all of that, I sit down and go, okay, how does that affect us in Northern Ireland? So what does that mean for us in Northern Ireland? So a lot of that I can play into it, but of course, as you know, there's a complexity of Northern Ireland all of its own. Quite a small geographical region, 6 counties. You can drive across it in a couple of hours now, particularly now they've built that new road from the northwest down to Belfast. But the complexity of Northern Ireland, of course, is the politics and its history, and we have to be really sensitive to that and do it in a very sensitive and nuanced way, because really we want to reach out to all communities. And I think Northern Ireland is interesting because RAF 100 taught us a lot about how we might be able to do that. I think we were a little bit nervous during RAF 100. What it showed us is actually we were welcomed pretty much by all communities. There were 26 airfields in Northern Ireland at the end of the Second World War. And I haven't taken a ruler out and measured it, but somebody told me that's almost, if not better, than the density of airfields in Lincolnshire. And of course, that was the home of Bomber Command. So the RAF footprint in Northern Ireland over a small geographical area was huge. And as you know, come from Northern Ireland, everyone in Northern Ireland seems to know each other quite well. And whenever I bump into people, I get the, oh, my granny used to deliver milk to this airfield, and my father, so everyone has a connection with it. And I just saw that a couple of weeks ago, Armed Forces Day. Again, I was hearing it and feeling it. So Northern Ireland knows the Royal Air Force. It's also got a very rich aviation heritage. I think the first manned flight of an aircraft built in the UK was done in Northern Ireland by a chap called Ferguson, who then went on to build tractors, Massey Ferguson. So again, and the people of Northern Ireland, as you will know, are very proud of that. And Shorts Brothers, a key aviation company from almost, if not 100 years ago. So very proud aviation history. Everyone seems to know us. But then again, we've got to be sensitive to the history of Northern Ireland and into certain areas. So to answer your question, when we write our plan, we're conscious of all that stuff. But what I've developed over the last 6 years with a team here in Northern Ireland, and I think it brought it home to me. It was a Newcastle Air Show, and it was, so I've been in post 6.5 years. My last post, regular post in the Royal Air Force, was Deputy Commander Capability and Air Member for Personnel, which is now the Deputy Chief of the Air Staff title. Was the air show at Newcastle, and I've got a picture of me shaking the hand of the Chief Exec of the Council there, with 9 red jets coming down the valley and 40,000 people on the beach. And those 40,000 people brought £8 million into the economy over 2 days. That's the reason why he was shaking my hand, I think. Those 9 red jets, the Typhoon and the Battle of Britain Memorial flight, and all of the ground displays that we had on the ground with our STEM village and everything else. Without us, it just would not have had the draw and the attraction. And that engagement taught me, I think, that we need to partner with the people of Northern Ireland as a service, but we also need to share how we add value, both cashable in terms of prosperity, but non-cashable in terms of other stuff we bring to it. I wrote my first plan, and I called it Partnership and Prosperity as the narrative. And actually, I've added normalisation to that a little bit as well, as we've opened up our low flying area in Northern Ireland as well. Complex, small area. Everybody knows us. We seem to be welcomed in most places we go to. As you know, in Northern Ireland, I could turn a wee chat into quite a long chat here in terms of stuff we do.
I think the normalisation is something I've definitely noticed in my 5 and 6 years in RAF reserves. And there's an awful lot of low flying and flying training happening across the province. And it's that seems a concerted effort in terms of ensuring the RAF has a presence here.
Yeah, so I think just before COVID, we thought, well, we've got a low flying area here in Northern Ireland, and there seemed to be a reluctance to use it, and I wasn't sure that was just a lack of knowledge, or people were still nervous about using it. So we made a concerted effort to make sure that in all the publications it was opened up. Now, just like every other low-flying area, the areas that we don't want aircraft low-flying over. And again, I talked about being sensitive, to certain communities and certain areas, and also urban areas. So, and of course, we've got quite a wiggly border going from Northern Ireland to Southern Ireland, and got to be careful of that as well. Unless you've got your passport, you don't want to cross that. So, particularly at high speed. So within that area, then we've opened up the low-flying area, advertised it, and also, the small contingent that you'll know, Vix, at Aldergrove. We've got a fantastic facility here at Aldergrove that's on the side of an international airport that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we can handle aircraft, and not just aircraft from the Royal Air Force, but from other air forces that may be transiting through. And also you will have seen the Irish Air Corps, who are partnering as well, come up and visit us and do some training up here. Like most things, I've got something that I've learned over many years, which is think big, act small, move quickly, and that's what we did. And gradually, it's just increased. And to begin with, we got some low flying complaints, no more than other parts of the country. And having been the station commander of RAF Odium in Hampshire once upon a time, there were a lot of complaints down in Hampshire. But that has dwindled off now. And actually, on social media, we put out the fact that we're going to have aircraft flying through, and then there's a huge positive response normally, and people have seen them and where they're going and what they're doing, and of course, Northern Ireland is also a nation of plane spotters. I've discovered as well. I like spotting planes, but boy, there are a lot of plane spotters in Northern Ireland as well. So all of that is great, and that's part of that normalisation, just making Northern Ireland feel like any other part of the United Kingdom.
Sir, what might you perceive to be the biggest challenges you faced in your role?
So I think there's always a challenge in Northern Ireland, with the politics. And recent opinion polls would say that I think over 40% of this public record, 40% of Northern Ireland would identify as coming from a nationalist community, 30% from a unionist community, and the rest don't identify. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're nationalists or unionists or whatever, but they do come from those areas, and they'll be influenced. So we always, that is the backdrop to the challenge of doing engagement in Northern Ireland. So it is a challenging place for Defence and the Royal Air Force to do engagement. And again, I'll be really honest, the RAF finds it a little bit easier than the Army does, or a lot easier than the Army does probably because of legacy. And the Navy are probably in a similar place to the Royal Air Force, but that's always a challenge. So you've got to be really careful, really sensitive about how we do it. I think if I was to single out the biggest challenge I've had, it was the COVID moment. When you try and engage with people, that's normally about communication. And of course, communication pretty much stopped for a year. So we had to find other ways of trying to do it. Interestingly, I already mentioned the A400M support, but the majority of the people of Belfast were vaccinated by military medics, and they didn't know it, because they came across to the conference centre there and were just wearing scrubs. And we had to be really careful about doing that, and they couldn't tell them where they came from, and they had to travel in civilian clothes. They were accommodated up at Aldergrove and other places. So that was a massive challenge to try and do the best thing for people, but without triggering any kind of political response. The upside of it was at the end of it all, I put my uniform on and told everybody, because they needed the recognition. And actually, you know what? It was pretty well received. It was pretty well received. So yes, I think, there is the big challenge is doing engagement with the political backdrop we have in Northern Ireland. And then COVID, probably within my period of time, has been the most challenging year or two within that, because it's just difficult to engage when you can't talk to them. Now, will they have their photographs taken with me in uniform? Not normally, but there was one instance where I mentioned the Newcastle Air Show, where we brought all those people and all that money into the local economy, and that picture of me in front of the Sleeve Donard shaking the hand of the chief exec of the council. Well, the chief exec of the council, it might have been the mayor actually. It was a few years ago now, but anyway, they were from Sinn Féin. If someone had told me that 20 or 30 years ago, I would not have believed them. But actually, why were they doing that? Well, they saw the value, both in terms of partnership and prosperity, that we were bringing into the local community. They may not agree with our politics, but they value that. And that's always a challenge. I think two things I've learnt from the people I work with in Northern Ireland and from my wife as well, that the people of Northern Ireland are really keen to attend things. So she says, we'll come to the opening of a letter. She also says that we'll travel to get offended. And I always have that in the back of my mind. Yeah. So you just got to be really sensitive, but be authentic, be empathetic, I think, to the watchwords. It's a bit like leadership. People want you to be authentic. They want you to be yourself. They don't want you to be hiding anything. So they want authenticity and they want empathy. And that, I think, are two of the key things that have guided me. And actually, they are RAF values. You know, they're part of RISE, our value set. So if we continue to operate within our value set and operate with authenticity and empathy and be ourselves, then, you know, my experience is that's always worked well. So I continue to do it.
Finding yourself in a situation or in a position now where building those relationships is key in a geographical location where it's challenging. Have there been moments where you found yourself in a space where you're not sure how you'll be received, and has there been any learnings in terms of overcoming that and changing people's perception?
So I think my lesson is overall, you know, don't hide, but be sensitive, be cognizant of where you are. You have to be able to read the situation and read the room quite carefully. But I've been surprised actually that how we have been welcomed into parts of the community where, you know, historically you wouldn't have thought we would be. And I'm talking about nationalist parts of the community. Even when I'm in my number one uniform, you know, Sinn Féin politicians will come up and talk to me. They're curious about what we're doing, why we're doing it, where we can add value.
No, it's been brilliant. In terms of Aldergrove that we spoke about there, the RAF presence is much smaller than it used to be. Some of the real estate has been shut down, demolished. Can you tell us maybe what the kind of forward plan for that station is?
So I think there's been a lot of questions. I mean, it's a matter of public record. A local MP for Antrim, and in which Aldergrove sits, asked the Prime Minister in the House, and there have been conversations, I know, at a political level about the future of Aldergrove. And at the moment, the future of Aldergrove is assured, particularly, I think, given, you know, the context we live in of an uncertain world. You know, it adds a bit of national resilience. We've still got fixed-wing aircraft that fly from there. We've got our University Air Squadron, our Air Cadet Air Experience flight, and you're now a very buoyant and award-winning Royal Auxiliary Air Force Squadron that's just passed its centenary, and it was the first ever Royal Auxiliary Air Force Squadron in the whole of the Royal Air Force, and it came from Northern Ireland. Number 502 Ulster Squadron, which has a very distinguished history, and is buoyant there. So even though we've got a small footprint in Aldergrove, it's hugely valuable. The long-term view, and we had the Chief of the Air Staff out visiting just over a month ago, and he was on record saying to a whole bunch of people that, you know, he knows of no plans to do anything with Aldergrove other than what we're doing with it at the moment, and Defence will keep it under review. Will it expand? I don't know. Will it get much smaller? I doubt it. So there is a need for it, and as long as there's a need, then we'll probably maintain the current footprint. I mean, I unashamedly push the value of it, and we use it now as an exercise location. We've had the P8 come out and base doing exercises. We've recently had A400 come in doing aeromedical exercises, mainly because we did 4 aeromedical moves during COVID, and there are 4 people who are alive today because of that, where we took very, very sick patients from Northern Ireland to a specialist treatment area, treatment hospital in Leicester Royal Infirmary, one night in very, very poor weather. And I know, well, here's a little bit of a story. I was at a Battle of Britain event a couple of years ago, and the chaplain said, "Oh, there's a lady here who would like to talk to you." And you know, that always has a double edge to me, because, you know, the alarm bells start ringing. Am I going to get moaned at? Which happens very, very rarely in Northern Ireland, I have to say. Or is it going to be another wee story? It was a wee story, and she was there with her grandchildren, and she said, "Can I just say thank you?" And I said, "Well, sure. What for?" I said, "In the middle of the night, you moved my daughter, and the last time we saw her that night was when she was given the last rites, and we didn't think we would see her the next day. And we woke up the next day to a phone call from the hospital, and of course we thought it was going to be the most terrible news, but the news was, your your daughter is in Leicester Royal Infirmary. She's stable and looks like she's improving, and she's now alive. She still has issues, I think, because you don't get that sick without carrying some disabilities. But yeah, so going back to that A400M thing, keeping that capability going and getting used to handling it, you just never know when you might need to use it. And I also am aware that there's some work that needs to be done to Bryce Norton's runway in the next year or two, and when that occurs, then it looks like the A400 training squadron might relocate to Aldergrove for a couple of weeks just to keep the courses going. So yeah, we've got huge facilities, or hugely valuable facilities there, and I unashamedly push it when I can.
That sounds great, and how brilliant to be able to have such a positive impact in a scenario like that at a crucial time. I know the reserves from 502 benefit from the squadrons spending time here, where we get to use our skills to embed within the squadrons in terms of ASOS or movers, MT, you name it. So yeah, it works both ways, and that seems to be probably a whole force concept working as it should. I wondered, you also mentioned just one of our last questions, the Irish Air Corps and the strength of that relationship. I was lucky enough to be in Dublin for the centenary celebrations in 2022, a really moving, special couple of days. And I know there's been work going on behind the scenes there to strengthen that relationship, to offer training, to bring their pilots and rotary pilots on especially. Is that still in a good place, that relationship, and what does that look like going forward?
Yeah, so that relationship stemmed from kind of 5.5 years ago, actually, 6 years ago, probably. I built up a relationship with Brigadier General Rory O'Connor, who is the head of the Irish Air Corps, in my last regular role as the deputy commander. And the next time I bumped into him, I said, we were having a conversation about how we can help each other. I said, you know what, I think we should write this down. Because in my previous role, with other allied air forces, we would have a program of record. So if we agreed to go and do some stuff together, we'd sit down and write it down and come up with a plan and then try and execute it. And Rory said, what a great idea. I should probably add here comes my connection. So the reason I'm Air Officer Northern Ireland is I'm married to a Derry girl, and my mother comes from Kilkenny in the south. Hence, I'm called Sean. I've got some great links to both sides of the border in Ireland. Yeah, and when I go down there, I'm known as Air Marshal Reynolds from Kilkenny. I kind of go, well, I guess that's kind of true, but it's not really. But they all like to kind of make you feel like you belong. Anyway, we sat down, and it's evolved over a number of years from basically just trying to explore what we could do to last year we trained 4 of the helicopter pilots, and next year we'll train another 4. They'd always wanted to train with us. Up until last year, we didn't really have the capacity to do that. Then we found some capacity within the rotary wing training, and that's been hugely beneficial. They'd like to do other training with us on fixed wing, and we're looking at that as well. P8 Force and their maritime patrol contingent with the CASA have always had a strong relationship. They had a particularly strong relationship during the days of the Nimrod, and we're rebuilding that now, sharing patrol patterns, some training, and they are visiting each other's bases now, both at Baldonnel and RAF Lossiemouth. Or Casement Aerodrome, I should say, which is the home of the Irish Air Corps, just on the edge of Dublin. Other things, we've done some aeromedical training, we've done some post-crash management training, and there was a commission report 2 years ago, which is like a defence review for the Republic of Ireland, and that resulted in quite a lot of expansion. So we've had a memorandum of understanding for a number of years about doing something with a radar, because the southwest is not particularly well covered for us by radar, and it looks like they're going to procure a radar, and they don't do primary radar, they haven't in the past, and of course we do, and they need some help. So they've been across to RF Shoreby to have a look at controller training. So they've been to Bulmer to look at how we do it there, and yeah, we're just seeing where we can help. And this relationship that we've had over 100 years, as you saw at that centenary, the Irish Air Corps came from us many years ago. They kicked us off Baldonnel, we gave them the keys to the station, and yeah, we've kept in touch ever since. So, but no, it's a great relationship. And we're just seeing where we can, they are our closest neighbour, and where we can develop that. So that has been something that has been a kind of an adjunct to my role as Air Officer Northern Ireland, but hugely supported by the air staff and the chief. So yeah, I think the relationship is growing and going from strength to strength.
Are those relationships and the opportunity to build them, identify them, and nurture them, is that something you enjoy as part of your role?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think, whether it's that or whether it's the stuff we do in Northern Ireland, I learned from somebody many years ago. I was the personal staff officer to a 4-star Air Chief Marshal a couple of decades ago, when we had a Commander-in-Chief, and he used to say, in terms of engagement, he said, "Sean, I constantly look for access points." And that's what I do. So I constantly look for access points as to where we can engage. And what access points do, I think, is unlocks opportunity. So, if I look at Northern Ireland now, what have we managed to do? So with my previous role, this kind of prosperity, how can we partner more with industry? So we set up a framework and then a forum, and this was 4 or 5 years ago. We ran a load of Dragon's Dens, and now we have an RAF regional innovation hub in Northern Ireland run by a reservist scrum leader. And I want to build that into a defence innovation hub. And I think that the new defence industrial strategy will give us an absolute opportunity to do that, so we can spend more money in Northern Ireland. But things that came out of that was, and again, this is widely known, small company called KX based in Newry, who were experts in data analytics, but had nothing to do with defence. They grew out of Wall Street. And through the connections and the access points, we did some introductions. And one of these Dragon's Dens was, we've got some really big challenges in data analytics, because our platforms go around hoovering up terabytes of data, and we need to process them really quickly. So we said, "Oh, could you help us with this?" And they said, "Yeah, how much data are you looking at?" And they went, "Oh, this." And they went, "Is that all?" And we kind of went, "Well, that's a lot, isn't it?" It went, "Not when you're on Wall Street, it's not." Where has that gone over the last 2 to 3 years? So they're now providing mission support for combat air and some of our ISR platforms. They also, through that, have won a contract with Lockheed Martin in the Skunk Works, which was announced at last Farnborough Air Show, because on that side of the Atlantic, they don't have that capability. So a small company in Northern Ireland are now providing mission support to the US Air Force. That's worth £8 million a year last year. And then another company called Kinsetsu, with 2 really impressive women who built this company from life sciences and biosciences in Northern Ireland, which then turned into asset tracking in hospitals. So when you wanted to find your consultant anaesthetist at 2 o'clock in the morning, and he wasn't responding, or she wasn't responding to a page or mobile phone, you knew which room they were having a rest in. Well, so we did the introduction, and we're still interested in using it on our bases, but to the Royal Navy. And of course, they've now got a trial running on the aircraft carrier that's out in East Asia at the moment, asset tracking. So all the sailors on board that aircraft have got a little chip in their ID card, so they know where they all are on the ship all the time. That came out of something that was non-defence related. So Northern Ireland has its 2 big prime companies, Thales and Spirit Aerospace, but it is a country of SMEs, really high-end engineering, and not necessarily in areas that defence normally touches. But when we find out these capabilities and we do the right introductions and we get the access points right, all of a sudden you've got companies who've got amazing technology that are fixing a defence need. And I think that is, when I read the Defence Industrial Strategy, that's what we're after. And when the Chief came over last month, we did a round table with these SMEs, with the 2 primes, and also academia, who we partner with as well. And he went, "You've got an amazing ecosystem here, because it's small, because you all know each other. And it's got two great engineering faculties at Queen's and also Ulster University, producing really, really well qualified and enthusiastic young graduate engineers, which just allows us to kind of do this sort of stuff." And I have to say, with massive support from all of the political parties in Northern Ireland. And when you've got that going on, then you can do stuff quickly. That's where we built the Innovation Hub, and I'm really keen to grow that through the Defence Industrial Strategy and into one of these regional innovation hubs that the government are talking about.
That sounds brilliant. The Innovation Hub, unique to Northern Ireland, tapping into, as you said, that SME knowledge, expertise in defence, cyber and aerospace.
Yeah.
And I think it puts us in a really good place as maybe somewhere not as strongly kind of visual in terms of maybe Air Force presence, but all of a sudden now tapping into and providing key output in a maybe, as an Air Force moving forward, moving away from just, we've got to think forward planning in terms of the way defence moves and the tech that's required, and sounds like that's happening here.
Well, yeah. So the other thing with academia is we've partnered with Queen's Electronic Communications Institute of Technology and their Cybersecurity Institute of Technology down in the Titanic area, which is an off-campus site, which has been going for just over 10 years and has grown 4,500 cyber professionals in Belfast. Belfast is now the cyber capital of Europe, and not a lot of people know that. And Londonderry is also catching up quickly as it spreads around the country. I think it has grown 60 odd SME companies in cybersecurity and digital tech. And because of that, we've moved 2 of the Chief of the Air Staff's fellowships to that Institute of Technology. So we've had a number of people doing masters and business management type postgraduate qualifications at Queen's. And I'm hopeful that next year we'll also put one up at Ulster University, up at Magee campus, working on conflict resolution, because there's a fantastic faculty there. The Foreign Office have been sitting there for people for a long time, and it's something that there's an interest from the Royal Air Force. So there are those access points, that you try and look for, and you build your network, and you build your community, and then you find the opportunities. But actually, you need to take a bit of strategic patience and keep on gently nudging. And that's the other value of the Regional Air Officer construct. So we do this in 3 yearly contractual chunks up to a maximum of 9 years. So I've been doing it for 6.5. I've got another 2.5 years, and then it's probably time for me to retire at that point. But that gives us continuity, and we get to know people, and they get to know us. So at Armed Forces Day a couple of weeks ago at Newton Arms, local politicians, local council leaders, heads of industry out here, academia, all sorts of people coming up to me and just saying hello, because I've got to know them over the last 6 years. And that's hugely valuable. The Army and the Navy don't do it the same way, and they are looking at us, I think, quite with a degree of envy, because it's that continuity and persistence in terms of strategic engagement and trust. People get to trust you, so it works really well, and I think it's a really valuable construct we've got.
It's really clear that dedicated role of an air officer in these regional areas can have such a positive and important impact. Can you describe it? The setup in England, is that a bit different, only having been brought in relatively recently, and how did that come, and are they seeing the benefit now? And why did it take so long?
Yeah, so I think historically we've relied on our station commanders and our force commanders kind of to do it around the country. But as we've contracted as a service geographically, so, for instance, my old station now, Odium, is the only RAF base we've got south of the M3. So there's a huge, and even when I was a station commander there, in terms of parenting air cadets and things like that was a big task. And the engagement task on top of that, you just could not get around all of the south of England. So I think there was a recognition a couple of years ago by the then chief and the board that how could we replicate what seems to be working so well in Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales to the rest of England. So just over 2 years ago, I think it was, we've now got 4 regional air officers in England. We've got one in the southwest, we've got one in the northeast, one in the northwest, one in the southeast, and then the commandant at Cranwell looks after the northeast. Although I think that's being reviewed at the moment, because that's quite a big task for the commandant on top of what they already do. And that's rolling out. It's a new construct. Of course, they pitch up at events and talk to people and things like that. They go, oh, hello, who are you? But all of it, from what I can see, are being really well received. Polly has also got the Channel Islands, because she looks after the southwest as well. And I think it's still quite early days, but I can see the benefit there, that a lot of what we managed to do in the devolved nations is now having an effect in those big chunks of the rest of the UK, where our density of air bases is on stations is probably not what it used to be. So Cosford, for instance, has got quite a big footprint in that part of the world, but it's anything north of that doesn't have a huge footprint. And same down in the southeast, as I've just said. We've got Swanwick and we've got Odium, but actually if you go into Kent, the home of Fighter Command and the Battle of Britain, so again, a huge history there. We've now got a regional air officer looking after that as well. So early-ish days, but I can start to see the benefits starting to occur as we would want.
A lot of this must be, to have this formal public-facing presence, must be really important and critical in terms of ultimately retention and recruitment into the Air Force. How do we look in terms of Northern Ireland and that piece? How do we fit into the bigger picture?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. So we get a huge amount of talent from Northern Ireland. I could say you might just want to look at the senior leadership of the Air Force at the moment to see how it percolates up. But a factoid that I use quite a lot is, as I said, 2% of the population of GBNNI comes from Northern Ireland, but 6% of defence, 6% of us comes from Northern Ireland. So that notion of service is huge. And because of that, we do really well from the talent. We over-recruit every year. I've already talked about people say to me that Northern Ireland has got the education system that Scotland might have had in the past and other parts of the UK that people aspire to. So it generates, really enthusiastic, well-qualified young people who'd like to serve and also recognise the value of a military career and the skills and knowledge and experiences that will give them. And if I also say that our recruiting teams are going into parts of Northern Ireland that I never thought we could ever go into. So some of the nationalist areas, and it's not because we're pushing, we're invited. The schools invite us in there because there's an interest. And we do it in a low-key, very sensitive way. But a lot of talent then emanates from those areas. And we also get quite a few people joining the Royal Air Force from the south, from the Republic. And again, I think we all probably know people that we've come across in our careers who've come from there. And again, highly talented, really great people. So yeah, we do really well there. I've already mentioned that enthusiasm for STEM-related issues. So I've been part of the Northern Ireland Schools Build a Plane project. Got a load of kids building a plane. The Air Cadets in Northern Ireland built a plane just prior to COVID. Our Air Cadet footprint is growing hugely, just like our reserve footprint is really buoyant. And I keep telling people we could probably have another reserve squadron in Northern Ireland if we wanted to, because the interest is there. And again, you read the recent Strategic Defence Review, and that wants more reserves. Well, come over to Northern Ireland, because there are a lot like you. There are a lot of people with lots of really interesting skill sets who want to serve and serve in the Royal Air Force. But on our cadet footprint, and just before COVID, we had 400 cadets. That dropped down to 250 during COVID. We've just gone past 600. We're opening another squadron in Fermanagh, in a part of Fermanagh we've never had a footprint in before. And we've got demand all over the country, like a lot of things. And the Commandant will tell you this, is that it's adult volunteers. Without the adult volunteers, we know we can't grow the cadets. So we're constantly looking for that. But people say in Northern Ireland, in engagement terms, we punch above our weight. Well, the reason, and I told the Chief this the other day, the reason we punch above our weight is I've got 502 Squadron, I've got the Air Cadets, I've got the Benevolent Fund, I've got RAF, I've got the small contingent of regulars at Aldergrove, who are really keen to put their uniforms on and engage and go out there and show off the Royal Air Force. And that's just huge. Yep, it's a small area, but I think our footprint is and understood. Yeah, and we get loads of invitations from all over the country. I think we managed to do about 50% of the time, but we've got a long list and we're kind of going through it. But things like the Port Rush Air Show last year, 150,000 people came to that. And they come to it to see 9 Red Jets, a Typhoon. Well, they come to see lots of things. Battleborough Memorial Flight. But our STEM village has gone from 1 marquee to 4 marquees now. And we've invited other people in from life sciences, from the medical schools, from all sorts of things, because the country needs young people, and particularly young women, to get interested in STEM. If we can help with that, that's part of that engagement. It's to the national good.
One company that's doing particularly well in that sector is Thales, very well known, a legacy and a history. They stemmed from the Short Brothers company of the 1930s through to Bombardier and rebranded as Thales more recently. Again, really prominent defence sector industry here in Northern Ireland, supporting Ukraine, supporting jobs, supporting the local economy.
Yeah, so again, with our innovation, we put a piece of work, which is research and development, about shooting missiles off drones. And it worked really well. And it might be in Ukraine now. So they're the kind of opportunities that we kind of look for, but you're absolutely right. And that's where that high-end engineering expertise comes from. So, and the supply network in Northern Ireland, I think it's something like 90% of its suppliers are based in Northern Ireland. Really high-end, high-quality engineering companies. Family-run businesses. I'll give you an example of a family-run business. 2 or 3 years ago, I took a minister up to a company in Magrafel called Moyola. Family-run business, been going for a number of years now, has had for, I think, the last 15 years, gold standard engineering awards. That's the only company in the country, the whole of the country, that's maintained that. And when I took the minister in, I was going up there to open an apprentice training facility that they've got. And they've grown from a family business into about almost 200 people now. But this bright young graduate engineer was showing us around their civil business. And he pointed out the fact that this is where we build the leading edge slats and slat actuators for the Airbus A320. At which point the minister said, but that's the most popular airliner on the planet. And they went, yes. And we build the front of the wings here. And he was looking down this big hallway. He went, all here? He went, yeah. And we've been doing it, since the aircraft came in. So he was just blown away. I didn't know that. And then we went round to their military side of the business, where they are subcontracted to MBDA, building some large components for our new family of missiles for the Royal Air Force. And again, it's really high quality engineering, and it's trying to make people aware of it. These companies want to win business on their own merit, and how can we, the Royal Air Force, help them to join up the dots so defence gets the best product it can? Yeah, so it's wherever I go, whether it's Thales, whether it's Spirit are doing a lot for building components and parts of GCAP. Holland and Wolff or Navantia as well, not part of what the Royal Air Force deals with, but also, so it's gradually trying to bring that prosperity in and see the value of the businesses in Northern Ireland and this expertise that people just don't know about. 7 or 8 years ago, I was the Air Member for Personnel, and we talked about flexible employment and flip-flop careers. Because young people now will have a number of careers and they might want to join the Royal Air Force and then leave and do something else for a bit and then come back in. Or they might want to do it as a reservist. Or they might want to work flexibly and have a couple of jobs and live in a location. And we, as a modern employer, we have to, in a tight labour market with demographics that are against us, if we want the talent, that's what we've got to be able to do. And I'm pleased to see it's happening. And we just need to do more of it. And I think places like these companies can do that. And also having ex-regulars rejoin the reserves. As you'll know, on 502, we have a number of them who bring that expertise and knowledge. And we've had reservists on 502 go back and be regulars again. And FTRS, why not? It's that rich mix of experiences and knowledge and talent.
We've spoken about regulars, the reserve cohort in Northern Ireland, cadets. What about the rest of the RAF family in Northern Ireland?
Okay, so again, part of my remit given to me by ACAS and the Chief is to engage with our veterans communities. Again, a challenge in Northern Ireland because of the history of the place and because of where some people live, they may not want to draw attention to the fact that they've served. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't try and support them, in a very sensitive way, so that rather than push, there's a bit of pull. So the way that we've done that is with the Northern Ireland Veterans Commissioner and his team over the last 3 or 4 years, we've set up a working group where every 6 to 9 months, and I convene it and facilitate it, we get all of the stakeholders in the room to see, and the questions I pose is, how many have we got? Where are they? Are we doing the right things for them? Should we do some more? And they're the kind of conversations that we have. And so we think there are about between 6,000 and 8,000 RAF veterans in Northern Ireland. And they can be, of course, people from Northern Ireland who've done full or partial careers in the Royal Air Force. Or, a bit like me, people who have had careers in the Royal Air Force and then marry somebody from Northern Ireland. And decide they want to settle there because it's such a beautiful part of the world, and all of that. And of course, we've got the bigger conurbations of Belfast and Derry, Londonderry, and to a certain extent Enniskillen. So we know that they are grouped around there, but there are also a lot of farms in Northern Ireland. There's quite an agrarian industry there with agriculture. So we're trying to map where they are, and through the RAF Benevolent Fund, through the Royal Air Force Association, and through the likes of the British Legion and SAFA, we work with all of those organisations to try and see whether we can answer those questions. Interestingly, what's happening in Northern Ireland, and it's on the back of the industry thing, there are a lot of people who've now set up their own businesses or work in business in Northern Ireland who are veterans. I said 6% of defence comes from Northern Ireland for 2% of the community. So it's 6% of Northern Ireland, you would say, have done some kind of service with the armed forces. And what's happening, of course, is they're building their own networks. And things like the Veterans Awards dinner, and I'm speaking at it this year, has now expanded into all of the blue light services as well. Because guess what? A lot of them then go work in the emergency services when they leave the armed forces. So there's this whole community that's suddenly, and again, it's that kind of trying to find the access points and trying to see the opportunities. And it's gradually growing, where like-minded people who've come from the same kind of background, guess what? They want to help each other. And they're doing that. The Veterans Commissioner, who just come back from a conference and outlined what we're doing, we're now being held up as best in class, which is great. But the context is different. We're a small bit of real estate. And maybe in some respects it's easier to do that. And of course, we all know each other. But nevertheless, so veterans is an important part of what we do to make sure that they're recognised for their service and they're looked after.
Sir, looking kind of ahead to your final maybe 2.5 years in role, what do you hope to achieve and what might you consider some of your highlights from your term?
When I look back first, I think we talked a lot about it. We've managed to build relationships with the Irish Air Corps, and they continue to grow. We've managed to build these really strong relationships with industry, academia, councils, local communities, and we just need to keep on doing that. We've managed to gently access parts of Northern Ireland that I never thought would welcome us, but they do because they see the value of what we bring. So I'm really pleased and proud with all of that. I'm pleased that opinion polls remain really high and buoyant in Northern Ireland. And when I look forward to the next 2.5 years, my kind of view is, once upon a time I used to be the strategy director in the Ministry of Defence, and I kind of used to think, figure out what's working well, do it even better. Figure out what you should be doing that you're not doing, have a go at doing it. Figure out what you shouldn't be doing, stop doing it. And that's what we're going to do. So keep on pushing on the stuff we're doing. I'd really like to build this innovation hub in the next 2.5 years into a defence enterprise. I'd love to secure the recognition of the value of Aldergrove. And I would love to see the cadets keep expanding. And I'd love to see another Royal Auxiliary Air Force squadron in Northern Ireland. Whether I'll see all those in the next 2.5 years or not, I don't know. But we'll just keep on pushing, see where it goes.
Air Marshal Sean Reynolds, thank you so much for your time. It's been so insightful and really interesting to hear about how buoyant and positive and the growth of the Royal Air Force and that perception here in the province. And I look forward to seeing what might be achieved in the next 2.5 years under your role as Air Officer in Northern Ireland.
Vix, thank you, and thanks for all your help and support.
This is Reheat on InsideAIR. I'm Corporal Victoria Andrews. Battle of Britain commemoration events are taking place to mark the 85th anniversary of the World War II military campaign. In his first week as Chief of the Air Staff, Air Chief Marshal Harv Smith attended an event in Stormont, Northern Ireland. He spoke of the significance of commemoration.
This year's the 85th anniversary. And uniquely, this is the first year where we have no Battle of Britain former fighter pilots remaining with us. So that tangible link to the past is gone. And that makes it even more important for us to commemorate all of those that went before and made the ultimate sacrifice.
It comes as Air Chief Marshal Smith also attended the Defence and Security Trade Exhibition, DSEI. He said how his focus would be meeting the pace of change head on by being more agile, more integrated, more ready to fly and fight. Meanwhile, the Chief of the Defence Staff, Air Chief Marshal Sir Rich Knighton, used his first public speech to say that he will focus on the military's readiness, its people, and the modernisation of the armed forces. And finally, the first Royal Auxiliary Air Force squadron to be formed has celebrated its centenary. while 502 Ulster Squadron was formed as an RAF Special Reserve Squadron in May 1925, a mix of regular personnel and reservists. Later that year, on the 12th of September 1925, 602 City of Glasgow Squadron became the first unit of the newly created Auxiliary Air Force, an organisation made up entirely of reservists and the foundation of today's RAF reserves. Officer Commanding Squadron Leader James Martin had this to say.
Researching our forefathers and their exploits of daring do, first flight over Everest, first squadron, reserve squadron to be equipped with the Spitfire. And today, in the modern era, we have our space flight, supporting UK Space Command and our colleagues within that domain. Really exciting, but the history is fascinating.
That's Reheat on InsideAIR.
I'm AS1 Ben Russell, and this is Under the Hat, where we get to know an aviator in less than a minute. Name you're known by.
Flight Lieutenant Matthew Leput, known as Matt.
What's your profession?
RAF Logistics Officer, based at RAF Wittering.
What's the best thing about your job?
I work on the most delicious squadron in the Air Force. I'm 2IC at 3 Mobile Catering Squadron.
Hardest part of your job?
Try not to eat too much, probably.
Best location you've served?
Probably RAF Wittering because of the diversity of units that are there. So I work within 85 wing. You've got 1 ELS, 2 MT, the movers, and 3 MCS. So it's a real logistics hub. So for me, that's brilliant.
And what's your proudest moment in the RAF?
Proudest moment in the Royal Air Force is to return to 3 MCS as the 2IC. So I actually was really fortunate enough to hold there as a holding officer between phase 1 and phase 2 training. I was only there for a couple of months, but they invested a huge amount into me, like coaching and mentoring and really into my development. So I was determined to spend the next few years learning as much as I could so I could return to 3 MCS